Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
You gotta kick it before we pick it. You know that song, Don't Do This.
Ruben Bressler.
How's it going?
Okay, here's up.
Good to see you.
We're going to kick it, much like the jams.
Can I kick it? Yes,
I mean...
Much like the jams, we are kicking it out this week. It's going to be super duper fun talking about all the kicker cards because we waited on this one. We waited until the new Zendikar set came out.
Yeah,
because it did actually have kicker in it. We weren't sure, but it did. So high five. So we'll talk about those here in just a minute. But we also get started with our choice of our top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent and letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 horrors. Ruben?
TPT39 had the comment that I thought stood out to me the most. As Evan likes to say, words mean things. A Mox gives you mana, a Shock deals 2 damage, and a hunted creature starts out as something that was great on rate but came with a significant drawback. So while a card like Hunted Witness or Hunted Ghoul doesn't follow the naming convention, I'm glad to see them get back on course with Hunted Nightmare. All that to say, my choice is Hunted Horror, because who doesn't love a 2-mana 7/7?
I know I do.
Yeah.
Well, that card was neat. This card's actually creeped up over $4 now.
Yeah.
This is one of those weird cards that when they chose a low converted mana cost and a high power and toughness, it didn't break Magic.
Right.
That's a thing that didn't happen back then. For those who don't know, Hunted Horror is 2 black mana for a 7/7 rare horror from Ravnica City of Guilds, has Trample, and when it comes into play or enters the battlefield these days, target opponent creates 2 3/3 green centaur creature tokens with protection from black.
Right.
Yeah.
So it essentially can always block most of your Hunted Horror, but there are a number of ways to get around this. You can bounce the centaurs. The rule around Despotic Scepter was changed because of Hunted Horror for like a brief second.
You own the tokens or whatever.
You owned the tokens, yeah.
Right. So you can sacrifice them with a scepter, so that's a thing. Right. There was a whole bunch of hunted creatures that were very neat. I like the idea of this design, but ultimately, it didn't really work out. I don't think you really want them to either. Is this the best thing we want to be doing in Standard? That seems kind of awkward.
See play in Commander.
Yeah, some of them see play in Commander. Hunted Dragon ended up being the 5th dragon in case you had a Bogart and Hellkite in your hand in most of those Dragon Storm decks in Standard. Because it's a 6/6 flyer with haste or whatever. Right. Or 5/5, I don't know. But Hunted Horror is the one that I thought was going to be the scariest. 2 mana 7/7? Boy howdy.
I know, right? Just didn't work out. Well, congratulations to TPT39. Please contact Erin on social media before she blocks you on all of them.
That's right.
32,000 and growing.
I think it's 34 now, but
I love that
I'll
song.
leave you unblocked on just one. Let's
32,000 and growing was really excellent.
Thank you. Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway, and stay tuned for our top 10 list this week, and maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate. So we get to talk about our top 10 kicker cards. We're gonna kick it good. There's 125 or so.
There were
between kicker, I thought it was.
Yeah, between kicker and multi-kicker, there was a lot.
Right.
This is a really beloved mechanic. People really, really like kicker.
Kicker's fantastic, and you could argue that a lot of the mechanics are just kicker renamed in some fashion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this was fantastic when it came out in Urza's Saga. Was that the one originally showed up? And all the way through today.
I think so.
In kicker?
In kicker, yeah. Sure, Urza's block,
I thought kicker started in Invasion. I don't think that kicker was in
that's
Urza's.
It was in Urza's, because remember Miscalculation? Remember that card?
Most early
cycling.
tournament legal cards with kicker were printed during Invasion blocks.
You're right. I'm thinking of cycling.
Gamepedia. Yeah. Multi-kicker was introduced in World Wake as a variant on kicker.
It's weird they didn't come back to that either in Zendikar. They didn't have just one, multi-kicker
Almost
card.
like it's not a Zendikar set.
Oh my God, Aaron. Jeez.
Wow.
I will go back on one thing I said. I did get a chance to do a pre-release for 2 this past weekend. I did get to play the set, and I had a really, really good time. And Party in Limited is very nifty. I was playing a Golgari Party deck, and I had a lot of fun trying to figure out ways to get Party going and the cost reduction from Party and the neat effects like that. So I'll give it. It's a fun set. I enjoyed Party in Limited, but
I accept your apology.
Wow. All right. Well, let's get started here with number 10. Ruben, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is a card that just it is the kicker card in my head of like, when I think of kicker, this is the card that I think of. It's a good spell, just on rate, at both of its casting costs. It's also got a kicker that is a different color than the card itself, which is something that they did a little bit of in Invasion. It is a card that a lot of the old school grinders used to love. It's made a couple of appearances here and there, but it's sort of fallen out of favor. But I just have a deep appreciation for Probe.
Oh.
Probe is 2 colorless and a blue for a sorcery. It is a common from Invasion with kicker of a colorless and a black. Draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards. If the spell was kicked, target player discards 2 cards.
Oh, wow.
There was very little that you wanted to be doing on turn 3 more than casting a probe, and turn 5 kicking a probe back in the day in your Psychotog decks, in your Battle of Wits decks. You know, there was a Probe Go deck that was often on the radar, and it was amazing and limited, of course.
Right. This is the sort of sift on drugs, I guess, on the kicker drugs, the kicker snap. Because,
I mean, this is seeing more cards than a catalog, which is a tournament, which is like a limited playable card, and you also get a Mind Rod attached to it if you play it on turn 5.
Right. Catalog is 3 mana, draw 2, discard 2, is that
Discard
right?
1.
Discard 1. Right. And this is draw 3, discard 2.
For 2 colorless, yeah, exactly.
Right. For the same cost, you get 3 cards, and you get the kicker on top of it. I remember seeing this in Cube back in the day. It was a sweet, sweet card in the blue-black decks. So, Aaron, what's number 10?
So the thing that determines whether or not I am likely to play a kicker card is how expensive is it? Because you know me, I don't like to pay full price for my spells. And so if I have to pay a lot for something already, and now you want me to pay more, I'm not really sure I'm into that. But my number 10 is one of those kicker cards that has a kicker cost that doesn't involve paying more for it. And there are some out there which makes me more attracted to them. My number 10 is very flavorful. It has a lot of popular characters from the game in the art, and it's just good. My number 10 is Blood Tribute. So Blood Tribute is 4 colorless and 2 black. It's a sorcery from originally printed in Commander 2017. And it says, kicker, tap an untapped vampire you control. Target opponent loses half his or her life rounded up. If Blood Tribute was kicked, you gain life equal to the life lost this way. I apologize. This was originally printed in Zendikar and then reprinted in Commander 2017. The reprinted version has Olivia and Soren and Edgar Markov on it because it was in the Edgar Markov deck. But this is really cool, you know, so you get this really cool, you know, massive drain life effect. And all you gotta do is tap a measly vampire, which if you're playing Edgar Markov, you're probably already running a vampire. And then you gain life, which is really, really cool. And so beautiful art, very flavorful, and not too much more expensive. I'm on board.
And immediately will one-shot somebody if you have an Exquisite Blood or a Veto
Sanguine Bond
of
or
the
whatever.
Dusk Rose. Yeah, Sanguine Bond, that's the one. Yeah, this card's great. I've definitely seen this card kill people. I've also seen this card just swing a game. You know, I'll go from 10 to 20 and put you from 20 to 10. Like, that's fine.
Excuse me.
Yeah, this card
The
is...
original art's very interesting. It's like Drana's Eos? Like, what's happening here?
It's a Drana booty.
It's a lot of booty.
We don't
There's
get a
some
lot of
tribute
booty.
being paid here, but we don't know where.
Are you drawing a booty?
Wow.
From tribute to tribute. Tribute?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Tribute. Okay. My number 10 here is, it's a new card, but it is very exciting. It saw a lot of discussion so far. A lot of people are excited to play this one, particularly in competitive Magic. If we could have that again, I am missing competitive Magic so much. Competitive paper, like watching events, like attending events, seeing people play, like it's killing me sometimes. Because I know how excited people are for Scourge of the Skyclaves.
Yeah.
Scourge of the Skyclaves is a black and a generic mana for a mythic demon. It has star for its power and toughness, and kicker of 4 and a black.
This card.
Yeah, so if you can pay 2 mana or you can pay 7 mana. If you cast this, when you cast this spell, if it was kicked, each player loses half their life, rounded up, and its power and toughness are each equal to 20 minus the highest life total among players.
So this got a little bit of buzz shortly before the set came out from Commander players because this falls into that alternate cost thing.
Yep.
You know, so for something with 2 CMC, you know, you can pair this with Nethroi, and Nethroi has that, you know, 10 power or less. You know, and these, you know, this thing can come back as part of that and then be really, really big, and then drain you, and you can do all sorts of dumb things with that. And it was just like, oh no,
Because it has negative power and toughness in the graveyard.
Yeah.
I've recently seen 8 shadow list with this and Death Shadow.
Yeah, right.
The bolt lands or the bolt land spells really help you drop that down. So you're playing it a lot like an old school blue-black Death Shadow deck where you're paying 3 life to play Agadeem's Awakening or whatever on turn 1.
Right.
You're playing something super aggressive. Everybody comes down to 9, and then you've got a million shadows in your deck. Twice as many shadows, even if it costs twice as much, it's good enough.
Yeah, this card could be a big, big boy on a battlefield.
Yes.
All I'm saying. Moving here to number 9. Aaron, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is a card that I got to play with in one of my first Commander decks. One of the first decks I ever played was a Daxos the Return deck, and this was a card that actually came with the deck. It came in the Commander set. It's an enchantment. It's also a neat take on anthems, which we've seen a lot of, and it brings things back from the graveyard, which of course I love. My number 9 is Marshall's Anthem. So Marshall's Anthem is 2 colorless and 2 white. It's an enchantment originally printed in Worldwake with multi-kicker of 1 colorless and a white. Creatures you control get +1/+1, which is fine. When it ETBs, you can return up to X target creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the number of times Marshall's Anthem was kicked. So an Anthem with the reanimation effect on it is really cool. In white, no less. And so, for the low cost of 2 mana per creature, you're not restricted to mana costs or power and toughness, just any creature you've got in the battlefield. And so, I've brought back like a Treasury Thrall and like a Celestial Archon, and, you just have a really, really good time with this. So it's good, on curve. You just want an Anthem, which you'll take. And then later on in the game, it really can turn things around.
Yeah.
Like, Wizards keeps kind of playing this weird game with giving white reanimation. Like, they kind of like it, but they kind of don't. And they want it to
and
be
they've been
white,
doing
black,
it
but
for
not
20
just
years.
I'm convinced this is the way to make white good again. Everybody's saying white's bad. Let white have this. Like, this is fine.
I mean, they tried to rally the ancestors things for a while.
Yeah.
Like, that was okay. And in white.
Sure.
Less Containment Priest and Rest in Peace, and more Rally the Ancestors. That's...
Like,
and
white.
And Return to the Ranks and stuff like that.
Yes.
These days, white sucks, and somehow green is doing everything.
Right.
Like, you saw even the new Walking Dead stuff. Suddenly, the green-black card cares about equipment. Like, what? Now green has equipment stuff too. Fine, whatever.
Sure. Whatever.
Do your stuff. All right. Marshall's Anthem, sweet though. All right. Let's move on here to Ruben's number 9.
I also have a multi-kicker as my number 9. It's a card that has a lot of casual fans. It never really did anything in Constructed, but it did a little bit in Extended. It was like right on the cusp of being good enough for the Elves decks. But in Commander, when you can kick this thing 2, 3, 4 times, Jaraga War Collar can make your team super big. Jaraga War Collar, originally from Worldwake, reprinted a couple of times, is a 1 mana, 1/1 elf warrior, 1 green mana, with multi-kicker of a colorless and a green. Jaraga War Collar enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it for each time it was kicked, and other elf creatures you control get +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter on Jaraga War Collar. So, for 3 mana, you get a 2/2 that pumps your team by 1. That's perfectly fine. That's Elvish Archdruid numbers. But for 5 mana, you get a 3/3 that pumps everybody by 2. For 7 mana, you get a 4/4 that pumps everybody by 3. And so it scales really nicely, especially in Elves Commander decks where you end up with a bunch of mana from Priests of Titania or from other Extra Planner Lens or something along those lines. And this can just be a huge overrun effect.
Yeah, even just stuff like Nissa just goes completely bananas with this card. And this card, thankfully, did see a reprint in Commander 2014 because, as I recall, it started to really creep up there. Because, people love elves. They like elves that do cool stuff. This is one of the coolest elves. It pumps your whole team. It's cool to search for because it's only 1 mana, so you can get it with all sorts of stuff. And
it's modal, like all the multi-kicker cards. A lot of the things I like about the multi-kicker cards are, is it good with no kicking? Is it good with 1, and is it good with 2? Like Marshall's Anthem. And this one is, it's not great with no kicking. It's pretty good with 1. It's great with 2. It's great with 3, and it scales pretty nicely.
Right. Checks all those boxes. So, for my number 9 here, again, another new card. There was definitely a time where Wizards would make and design cards, and they would say, you're going to get this cool effect, but you're going to have to pay for it, right? And like Kamigawa was just completely just riddled with this, where you're able to get the creatures back, but the creatures are like crappy for the amount you're paying for them, yada yada. You don't get anything like on rate. You have to pay X mana for this effect, where you always pay Y mana in any other scenario. Because, for example, for a while, just being able to print a black and a generic mana for a 2/1 with Menace and Lifelink, Like that alone would be a sweet card in Limited. That's a good uncommon. Like that would see play in all your black decks, absolutely. But somehow, with no Priest of Oblivion, you don't have to pay any more for Zombify.
Oh no.
You just get the Zombify for Zombify mana. And that's ridiculous. I cannot get over how sweet No Priest of Oblivion is. It's a rare from Zendikar Rising. It's a black and generic mana for a 2/1 with Menace and Lifelink, and has kicker of a black and 3 generic mana, because when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, you return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's just Zombify stapled onto a 2/1 with Menace and Lifelink. That is ridiculous.
It is crazy.
It's crazy. It's just crazy to me. I can't get over it.
And it is, I've only played it in Limited, where it is an absolute bomb. It is absurd in Limited, and pairs very nicely with Blood Beckoning.
Nice.
To be able to just repeatedly, fetch itself back and forth. Like with, the kicker deck, if you splash black, you just get so much value of getting all your things back. 2/1 Lifelink Menace for 2 is
already a
above
fine rate. Fine rate.
Like you don't get that usually in any capacity, and then at 6 mana, well worth it to get your 2/1 and whatever big thing is in your graveyard.
It's good early. It's good late. That's a damn fine Magic card. All right, we want to hear to number 8. Aaron, what's number 8?
My number 8 has been printed exactly once in Dominaria, and is now seeing play. EDH Rec says it is in 12,099 decks, which is pretty cool, considering that there are a lot of green ramp spells out there, and you can choose to play this one. I seem to recall playing it. I'm not normally a sealed player, but I absolutely played sealed in Dominaria, and I was happy to play this card. My number 8 is Grow from the Ashes. So Grow from the Ashes. See, I heard that.
That was Ruben's. That was one of Ruben's pet cards.
Grow from the Ashes was 2 colorless and a green. It's a sorcery with kicker, 2 colorless. You can search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, doesn't stay tapped, and then shuffle your library. If this spell was kicked, you get to search for 2 basic lands, again, not tapped, and put them onto the battlefield and shuffle your library. So, who would have thought that this far into the game, we'd still be finding cool ramp spells that, people would want to play and exciting ways to do ramp. And then this card came out, and here we are.
Card's $1.25. Wow.
Is it really?
Yeah,
wow.
for a common.
Yeah, this card was one of my most drafted commons, if not my most drafted common from Dominaria. I loved drafting the 3, 4, 5 color mix up with 3 Grow from the Ashes, and Skittering Surveyors and stuff like that, and just like whatever rare I open, like whatever garbage rare, whatever 7 mana piece of crap I open in pack 3, I can play.
Oh, man.
Because I could be base green blue, and I open the vampire that is black and costs red, and be like, you know what, I've got it, because I've got all these Grow from the Ashes. I love this card. This card is amazing with a Tatiova in play. I mean, this card it's so good with everything, because not only does it get you the lands, it gets them untapped. So you can leave up negate mana if you want to. You can play another 2-drop after you kick it. You can leave up Shivan Fire after you play it on turn 3. This thing does it all.
Yeah, Dominaria, I'm so happy I just randomly bought a booster box of Dominaria. I can literally see it over there in my closet right now. It's just hanging out. And now that I sort of recognize it as at least my favorite, one of the best Magic sets of all time.
Right.
It's great to see cards like this, which were fantastically designed. Like, this is just the right numbers.
This was a good set.
Yeah, the right way to do all those things. It was
They're
super
$1.25. I probably got 50 of those up on my shelf.
I know, right?
Man.
Jeez.
There's your retirement plan, Ruben.
This is like, exactly. This is like when I heard that Simian Spirit Guide was like $4 a piece. And I was like, I've got just 30 of those. This was like 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever. Yeah. But that's like, I love hearing that on Christmas morning.
Well, I let our buddy Chris know that Cabal Coffers is $75. And he was what? And he's like, really? And I was like, yep.
I paid 20 or 30 for it back in the day, and I was bitter about that.
Uncommon. They will not reprint it. And it's like, if they reprint it again, I expect it to be mythic. Like, sometimes Wizards does this thing where they kind of forget to reprint a card so long that they can't reprint it as it was originally printed. And then they go, well, we'll make it rare or mythic because, oops, money, Yeah. And there we are. So Mana Echoes, stuff like that.
I still have to pick up one of those. Thank you for reminding me.
You should sooner than later. Ruben, what's your number 8?
My number 8 is another card that I enjoy quite a bit, and it also has a little bit of a history because it was spoiled later in a set, and people were none too keen on it being the last card rather the last mythic, spoiled from that set. Even though it's quite good, even though it has seen high-level competitive play, Comet Storm still has a bit of a checkered history. X-Red instant with multi-kicker, originally from Worldwake. Choose any target, then choose another target for each time this spell was kicked. Comet Storm deals X damage to each of them. This is like the better, fixed, faster fireball.
Right. This is the fixed fireball, essentially.
Yeah.
It goes multiple
That
targets.
made more sense.
It makes sense. The multi-targeting, multi-kicking, all these things kind of click. It's terrible. They've reprinted it a million times, but that's okay.
They have reprinted it a gazillion times.
It's so odd that red and X is somehow usually untenable or bad, but red X is never bad and has never caused any problems in the history of Magic. Never a red X spell has done like literally anything, whereas red X spells like, Banefire and stuff have done things over the years.
Except for Rolling Thunder, because that's literally the only X spell legal in Pauper.
Yep, the only one. That's all you get. So yeah, Comet Storm was weird. My number 8 here is, I think it's one of the last new cards that I want to talk about. Not the very last, but one of the last. This is a card that when I first heard about it, I was like, this is so cool. I was like, I can't believe they took this mechanic. That's so cool. And like, they just they did something totally unexpected. How in the world do you kick a Planeswalker? And they're like, Jace Mirror Mage, got you, fam. And I'm like, oh my god. And I've played with it, and this card is dope. And now that like Uro Omnath ain't the default best thing in the world, this thing might actually get to see some play. Jace Mirror Mage is a blue and generic mana for a 4 loyalty mythic legendary planeswalker Jace, of course from Zendikar Rising. It has kicker of 2 generic mana. When Jace Mirror Mage enters the battlefield, if Jace was kicked, create a token that's a copy of Jace Mirror Mage, except it's not legendary and its starting loyalty is 1. It has +1, scry 2, and 0, draw a card and reveal it. Remove a number of loyalty counters equal to that card's converted mana cost from Jace Mirror Mage. So you have both of these that can do that. You can draw 2 cards. You can set up the scribe with the one, draw from the other one. Both can scry if you're really looking for something. Like, this card's fantastic on turn 3, great on turn 5. I've played against it. It is the real deal. It does hurt you badly if you let it sit there turn after turn, just eating away at you. Card's great.
This thing's great.
Yeah, I was a big fan.
I'm looking forward to seeing if it can see play in Standard. I also really appreciate that they did something different with Planeswalkers this time around, which is that they put these keywords on them. They put Kicker on Jace. They put Landfall on Nissa. They did really interesting things, and I thought that that is a brand new frontier for Planeswalker design.
I appreciate that they mentioned that specifically in terms of like tying the Planeswalkers into the world, is to give them some of the mechanics that's part of the world that makes sense. And it really did work really well here. I thought they did great. Let's move on here to number 7. Mine is higher on someone else's list, the first of 3. Oh. Aaron, what's number 7?
So I had a chance to play with my number 7 during the early access event for Zendikar Rising. I was playing a Doom Foretold deck, and this was in there. There were, 3 or 4 copies of this, and I was a little skeptical going into it, but, this card really did everything. I was able to rebuy my Charming Princes. I was able to destroy creatures, so that I could get to the middle game and turn the corner, or to stabilize. And also, if I was already doing well, I could just use it as a mind rot, which always felt really good. My number 7 is Inscription of Ruin. So Inscription of Ruin is 2 colorless and a black. It's from Zendikar Rising. It's a sorcery with kicker 2 colorless and 2 black. You can choose one. If the spell was kicked, choose any number instead, and you get the options of target opponent discards 2 cards, return target creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, or destroy target creature with CMC 3 or less. And so this card just did everything for me. It was great on turn 3 if you wanted to kill somebody. It was great later in the game when you really wanted to put the nail in the coffin and make them discard cards so that they couldn't get ahead again. You could also rebuy a lot of your blinking cards. And so I had a lot of fun with this card. I played it non-kicked, I played it kicked, and I was happy to see it every time.
Yeah, Mind Rot, let me tell you how far the Mind Rot has fallen at this point. When you have Mind Drain, which not only discards 2 cards, they mill a card and lose a life, and you gain a life for the exact same mana cost. Here you have the rare that does up to 3 different things that are all sweet.
Things,
Yeah, Mind Rot's just Out of here. No wonder they're not making core sets anymore.
The trio of inscriptions, the blue, black, and green inscriptions, are automatic first picks in my Zendikar Rising limited experience.
True.
Every single one of them is amazing. I've definitely gotten to kick Inscription of Ruin, get back my 2 mana party cleric or whatever, kill something of theirs, and get rid of the last card in their hand. Yeah, this card is incredible.
And I so appreciate that the blue inscription didn't counter spells. Like, thank you.
Well, and is a sorcery and
it's
costs
a
1,000,000 mana. So
right. It's okay.
Still
that it's
insane.
That. Still insane. Bouncing 2 creatures is just
bounce 2 creatures, scry 2, draw 2 cards, make an XX. I mean, that's a lot.
It was quite a lot. Ruben, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is when you think of the creation of Kicker, when you think of the simplistic version of what Kicker is and what it can do, when you think of the genesis of Kicker as an ability, you have to go all the way back to Invasion. And if you look at the front of a pack of Invasion, you see a Kavu Titan looking back at you. The OG, it's where we started. Kavu Titan is a colorless and a green for a Kavu that's a 2/2 and has Kicker of 2 colorless and a green. If Kavu Titan was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 3 +1/+1 counters on it and with Trample. It even got a callback later in Dominaria, where now Magic cards are allowed to be good, and so Untamed Kavu did pretty much the same thing, except for that it had Vigilance and Trample, even if it was just a 2/2, and the Kicker was all colorless. But you look back and you see the Todd Lockwood art, and you look at where we came from, and like indelibly in my mind, this is the Kicker card.
Mark Rosewater has a great story where he talks about they were playtesting this card and he kept winning with it where other people were not winning with Kavu Titan, and they couldn't really figure out why. And they finally noticed that Mark would play it as a 2/2. And everyone else would wait and only play it as a 5/5, and he would just kind of get in there and try to have as many creatures as quickly as possible. And that's how you sometimes need to play this type of card. So that's a very skill testing type of moment that was brilliant, because at the time, this was a rate you didn't get. You didn't get power and toughness equal to the mana cost.
Sometimes you got to play your Roost of Drakes on turn 1, folks. Sometimes you got to just get stuff going.
Right. Yeah. Just get it started sooner than later. And Kavu Titan is the perfect example of, do I push now or do I see more lands in my hand and I just have to wait to make this thing a 5/5? And you could lose because of that. That was really sweet. All right. So my number 7, as said, is higher. So we'll move on here to number 6. Aaron, what's number 6?
I actually share my number 6 with somebody.
Yeah, we share out of all of the Kicker cards.
Wow.
What you know about this card, Ruben?
Well, the reason why I put it at number 6 is it's not going to crack my top 5. I feel like top 5 I needed to reserve, but among cards that didn't quite reach the mountaintop, this one still sees a ton of cube play. I've cast a lot of this card, and it's just a very good card on turn 2 or turn 3.
Yeah. Also sees fringe modern play. Some people try to make mono black devotion happen, and it's good for the pips in addition to what it does. Also, people have always tried to make vampire tribal a thing in modern to various degrees of success. And so you can sometimes find it in a competitive format as well. Our number 6 is Gatekeeper of Malakir.
Nice.
So Gatekeeper is 2 black, 2 pips, originally printed in Zendikar. It is a vampire warrior with 2 power, 2 toughness, and a kicker of just 1 black. And then when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, target player sacrifices a creature. So you get an Edict and a 2/2 for 3 mana? Where's the problem here?
Nope. Yeah, this card has sort of all the right numbers on it. It's like, okay, it's a 2/2 we need to be, or it's that sacrifice effect. It doesn't target a creature. Sometimes that's important.
Asymmetrical too. Fleshbag Marauders, everybody. And so this is just the person. Like, that's fine.
Like, making you sacrifice Merit Lage tokens was very, very important at one point of this card's life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a thing.
Absolutely. And this is also iconic art from Karl Kapinski, who we've talked about recently on the show as being
accident.
in a bicycling accident. So get well soon. And but your art is spectacular, and this is just another example of it.
Yeah, this card is also on the list.
So it is on the list.
It may be in set boosters of Zendikar Rising. Well, right along with that uncommon comes this common, and I'm so happy it is because it's terrific in Pauper. It was amazing in aggro decks then. It's still amazing in aggro decks now in Pauper decks. It's cool. It's a goblin. It scares the crap out of you when it hits the battlefield because it's Goblin Bushwhacker. Yeah. Goblin Bushwhacker is a red mana for a 1/1 common goblin warrior with a kicker of a red. And when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. Woohoo! I just won some, turned some cards sideways with this guy.
Oh, good heavens. With Empty the Warrens, this is a common secondary finisher. There is also a modern deck called 8 Whack.
I was just going to ask you, because I know Reckless Bushwhacker is a thing. I didn't know if these are the 8 that we're talking about.
Yeah, these are the 8 that we're talking about. Bushwhacker and Bushwhacker together. And again, words mean things. Bushwhacker is a goblin warrior that has kicker that gives the rest of your team +1/+0
that does cool
and haste.
things. Yep.
I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, Goblin Bushwhacker is absolutely terrifying for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Reckless Bushwhacker in Oath of the Gatewatch, like how they had to make that card much, much crappier than Goblin Bushwhacker.
Oh, yeah.
3 mana to start. Doesn't do anything beyond that if you don't, unless you pay 5, which is like $1 million in the red deck. Versus Goblin Bushwhacker, which is like 2 mana. Got you.
Yeah.
Got
you.
Well,
it has Surge.
Yes.
So you could theoretically play it on turn 3. But it's pretty tough to do.
Yeah, it was whatever. So, anyway, moving on here to number 5. Wait, do I have number 6? Yeah, I did. That was the Bushwhacker. Number 5. A man tries to keep things together. Ruben, what's your number 5?
I've talked a lot on this show already about Phyrexian Skuta. Which is a kicker card, and so we may talk about it later. But I've said it on my zombies lists, I've said it on my hill giant list. I wanted to talk about the other kicker creature that is in the World Championship winning Machine Head deck from 2001, that was, of course, reprinted in Dominaria as an uncommon, because it wasn't, creatures have come a long way, and Skizzick is no different. Skizzick is 3 colorless and a red for a 5/3 with trample and haste. It is an elemental. It was a rare in Invasion and an uncommon in Dominaria.
Good.
At the beginning of the end step, if Skizzick wasn't kicked, sacrifice it, and that's only a kicker of a red mana. So you either get a 5/3 for 4, or you get a 5/3 that sticks around forever for 5.
Yeah, this card, used to be really interesting, used to be kind of scary, has some ball lightning type feel to it, which it kind of wanted to be but not be, because at the time, particularly back in the day, they thought ball lightning was way over the curve, way too good.
That OG Ron Spencer art too.
I know, right? Which is super duper dope. I've enjoyed this card. And in limited, it's cool. It's not ridiculous, but it's good.
Every time it's one of these cards that I never play. And then my opponents will play it, and I'm like, why am I never playing this card?
Right. And it just beats you to death.
It just beats me to death.
Mm-hmm. Card's sick. Aaron, what's number 5?
Mill players.
No, the card is Skizzick. It's not sick. It's Skizzick.
Skizzick. Got it.
Sorry, go ahead.
Mill players have been eating well, thanks to Zendikar Rising. They got all sorts of new toys. Mill even won a modern challenge. What a world.
Look at God.
And this is, partially in thanks to this card right here. This was a card I was even excited about for a little while. And, now that Omnath is gone in Standard, who knows? Mill could be on the table in Standard as well. My number 5 is Maddening Cacophony, or as Evan says, Cacophany.
Cacophany. Hey, y'all.
Cacophany.
So Maddening Cacophony is 1 colorless and a blue. It's a sorcery. Each opponent mills 8 cards. Now that each opponent is very, very relevant, particularly in Commander, because a lot of mill effects make you target a player. There are surprisingly few mill effects that target everybody. And so if you're trying to do mill in Commander, you absolutely want this card. If the spell was kicked for 3 colors and a blue, each opponent mills half their library rounded up. Again, each opponent. And so this is very easy to, Blue's very good about getting instants and sorceries back from their graveyards. And so if you're playing any sort of long game, this is exactly where you want to be. And so, this card is slotting into those kind of modern mill decks and could very well see play in Standard as well. And, amazing art by Magali as well.
This is the perfect example of, I don't have the wild cards. If I get the wild cards, I will cash them in for this. Yeah. I will play that deck 3 or 4 times and go, what in the hell was I thinking? Right. And now I can't get my wild cards back because I cash in on maddening, this one.
On a
Cacophany.
Cacophany.
On the Cacophany. Yeah, the utter cacophony of my wild cards this thing eats is ridiculous.
Yeah, this thing, I mean, 8 is a huge number for a colorless and a blue. Like, that is a massive number.
I have seen people play mill decks in Historic with this card. It does exist. It's not nothing. Like, it's scary.
I mean, Glimpse the Unthinkable is 10 cards, but that requires you to play 2 different colors. This is super easy to do, and it's got the benefit, if you really want to, later, when you have nothing else to do, pay 6 and traumatize them.
Right, well, because then you can get, cards back, instant and sorcery cards back with different creatures and different spells. Like, it's easy to get this thing back and then just kick it and then keep going till they're dead. It's really cool. And man, let me tell you, casual players love them some mill. Right, nothing that they've never seen a mill card they don't love. My number 5, my top 5, definitely in my top 5. This is a card that is super dope. They've made it and they call it different things. This card is a super early pick in my draft decks all the time. I love it early. I love it late. You always want to kick it because you always want to draw that card. But Into the Royal is just... just wonderful design. Into the Royal is a blue and a generic mana for a common instant. It says return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, but if you kicked it for a blue and a generic mana, you also get the draw card. So for 4 mana, return a non-land permanent and draw a card. That is good, clean living right there.
Yes, it is.
Yep, and I love it.
That card is great and was also Blink of an Eye.
Yep.
In Dominaria, because the Royal is unique to Zendikar. Both versions have seen play in very competitive decks, have seen play in cubes.
Right.
It's great at 4 mana. It's fine at 2. Like, it's a thing that in limited, if you're like, all right, I got this Into the Royal in case they've got Embercleave or whatever, so you can, get around stuff.
Yeah, but the core ability to sort of, gain tempo. They wasted mana. You put mana into this. You're drawing cards. You get to untap with all of your mana. Like, Into the Royal is sweet every single time I've played with it. Let's move on here to number 4. Aaron, what's number 4?
My number 4 is a card that I predicted was going to see play in multiple formats, and it appears that it is already. Standard, Pioneer is playing this card. It's seeing a little bit of play in Modern as well, and I think it could even be good enough for Legacy play. I had a copy or 2 of this in my pre-release for 2 this past weekend, and I was always happy to see it. My number 4 is Blood Chief's Thirst.
Yeah.
So Blood Chief's Thirst is 1 black, originally printed in Zendikar Rising. It's a sorcery for a kicker 2 and a black, and it says destroy target creature or planeswalker with CMC 2 or less for 1 black mana. Woo! There goes Renin 6. There goes, Deathrite Shaman, things like that. If the spell was kicked, instead destroy target creature or planeswalker. So, again, great in the late game. Great to see in your opening hand. For 4 mana, just be able to get rid of anything unconditionally is really, really cool. And so, I've seen some really nice discussions comparing this to Fatal Push, where, Fatal Push, you gotta have Revolt, and even then, that kind of stops at a certain point. But, this, involves a different hoop to jump through and doesn't really have a threshold. And so, I'm anxious to see what people do with this, but yeah, it is already seeing play in multiple formats.
There's little. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying I've seen a lot of this being seen played against me all the time, killing like Lotus Cobras, the red 1-drops or whatever. Like it fits into almost any black deck right now in Standard.
Absolutely, Lotus Cobra is priority number 1 for this card. It's why you see so many Spike Field spikes, whatever that card is called.
Right, the red 1 damage thing.
The red 1 damage thing. Yep. But this is also able to take out Tarmogoyf. This thing's able to take out big 2-drops, much less planeswalkers, so get those white-bordered Tybalts off the table. And then, of course, 4 mana, kill anything. Get rid of your, Nissa Who Shakes the World, get rid of your Omnath, get rid of your whatever.
Get rid of my Ugin and my Forsaken deck.
Right.
And then I go, ha, 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 and then I play my second one. That's when they scoop. They scoop on the second one.
It's fine.
I had to show them a
second.
Look, they
paid 4 mana to kill your 8 mana card.
They did. So I hope they enjoyed themselves. Ruben, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is the only higher that's on someone else's list.
Well, look away, children, okay?
Oh, no.
That was the title of a very interesting Twitter post that showed a picture of Seagate Stormcaller and him to Turok with a copy of itself on
Oh
the
my
stack.
gosh.
This
Gross.
card is crazy. This card is nuts in ways that had to be seen to be believed, right? Like I had seen this card or heard about this card early, and I was just like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But you see all this crazy stuff that happens in older formats, and you're like, dear God, Seagate Stormcaller is the truth. This card is a blue and a generic mana for a 2/1 mythic human wizard with a kicker of a blue and 4 generic mana. So either 2 mana or 7 mana. When it enters the battlefield, you copy the next instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 2 or less you cast this turn when you cast it. If Stormgate Stormcaller was kicked, you copy that spell twice instead. You may choose new targets for the copies. Fork sucks. Fork continues to suck. They move it to a different color, it continues to suck. They're like slapping it on artifacts, it continues to suck.
Now it's on a 2/1.
Now it's on a 2/1. Like, fine, here you go. Do what you want. Go nuts.
I had to read this a couple times. When it first came out, I thought you didn't get the copy unless it was kicked, period. I didn't know that you got a kick just for 2. Like, you got to copy it just for 2 mana.
This thing's very scary on turn 3 or turn 4. Tormenting Voice, for example. Anything that requires an additional cost.
Neoform is an instant win in Historic. I just lose to that deck. I play the Forsaken deck, I just lose to that. That's what happens.
Yeah.
They get Dualcaster Mages over and over until they get that stupid wall that gives your creatures haste, and then you die.
I love that. That's hilarious, actually. This card is bonkers. I mean, it's the spiritual successor to Snapcaster Mage for this set. It is no Snapcaster Mage, but what is? Right. This is a much different card. This is a much, this is the cheapest we've ever gotten this, and I am thankful for it.
This is one of those cards that now is basically on the radar for any instant or sorcery that costs 2 or less until the end of time. Right. Until the end of time, you're going, but what happens when Stormcaller gets it, right?
Right.
What happens on turn 3, turn 4, right? That's going to be a thing we get to talk about from now on, essentially.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on here to our top 3. Aaron, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is the only higher on my list.
Oh, well, I have a higher on my list than number 3, so Ruben, you got us?
I do got you.
Save us.
And we've talked about most of the top EDH cards that have kicker. We've talked about Comet Storm, we've talked about Grow from the Ashes, we've talked about Into the World in Blink of an Eye, but we're still missing the top 2, and my number 3 is one of those top 2. It is a card that I have seen in every deck that can possibly play it, and it's also one of the cards that when people bring it up, people say, well, all you have to do is kick a Writeup Replication, and then the game is just over, right? So Writeup Replication is 2 colorless blue. It is a sorcery originally from Original Zendikar with kicker of 5 colorless. Create a token that's a copy of target creature. If the spell was kicked, create 5 of those tokens instead, which is ridiculous. A lot of the kicker cards in Zendikar were printed with huge kicker costs because you wanted to have a lot of landfall, and so getting to 9 mana was not unreasonable.
No.
And Writeup Replication fits right in with that, and it was not really played that much in Standard, but in Commander, when you want to make a million, things, this is where it's at.
Yeah, this card is never used in conjunction with their things. You never hear about this card. You never hear like a sweet little story where it's like, oh, they played a Writeup Replication on like a Soccer or a Tri-Belder. Oh no, girl. It's always like, it's always just some ridiculous, like, why?
They drew cards, they got mana, they took some turns.
We played it on a
You win
Paladin
the game. Yeah. I mean, it's just,
we played it on a Stony Brook Banneret and played the rest of our deck. We played it on a Master of Waves and made a million 2/1s. Like, there's nothing fair, really, about this card.
Yeah, this is a card that's held its value very well over the years, $5 plus, no matter where you're finding it. It's a great commander card. All right, let's move on here to number 2. My number 2 is higher on someone else's list.
Jeepers.
Dang it. Ruben, what's number 2?
My number 2 is the number 1 kicker card on EDH Rec. It is number 1 with a bullet, and it is also the number 1 multi-kicker card on EDH Rec because it is Everflowing Chalice.
That was my number 3.
And
there you go.
Number 7.
We're right in the same neighborhood, and it's no surprise because Everflowing Chalice is amazing. Originally printed way long ago.
It wasn't that long ago. It was just 10 years.
Worldwake. There we go. But it was printed long enough ago that it's got like 10 reprints, and it's still worth
like
$2.
$2. Yeah.
Like it's very, very popular. It is a 0 mana artifact, uncommon, with multi-kicker of 2 colorless, which means you may pay an additional 2 any number of times that you cast the spell. Everflowing Chalice enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it for each time it was kicked. Tap, add a wingding for each charge counter on Everflowing Chalice. So, easy. Turn 2, taps for a colorless. That's easy, right? That's Mind Stone, but without the extra. But you also get 4 mana, get 2 charge counters. That's Hedron Archive.
That's right.
6 mana, get 3 counters. That's Dreamstone Hedron.
Yep.
And you can keep going and keep going and keep going from there.
Yeah, this also saw a little bit of play in Modern in the Urza decks, because you could just play this for 0. And then you play Urza, and then whoop, you got yourself a free black mana. That's an artifact that you can tap, that you can use for, improvise or whatever it was. And it's blue mana. Like, people were just running 4 of these. And, you can
Sapphire.
pay, right. Yeah. You can pay 2 and kick it if you want to, or you can just not.
Right. Exactly.
Just pay 0 and get it for free.
Right. Mm-hmm. Back in my day, we paid 2 mana to make this tap for mana in our Tezzeret control decks or our blue-white artifact
Or they do like a modern
decks.
paradoxical outcome impression. Just whoop, whoop,
right.
whoop.
Exactly.
This was released around the time where I was able to hang around R&D quite a bit. This was a Ken Nagel special. I want to say that this was like the first multi-kicker card they designed, or he designed.
Wow.
Because it's very sort of simple, it's straightforward, but it's beautiful in that it just makes sense. All the numbers are correct. It's a very elegant card. Even though there's a bunch of words on it, every piece of it makes sense. It's like, it's 0 mana, it's 2 to kick it, you get a mana for time you kick it. That makes sense. Like, all of those words work, and that's fantastic. And this is one of those cards that just, I don't see this ever sort of getting old, or I hope this doesn't get outplayed. You know what I mean? This to me is the right rate for exactly what it does.
Yep.
And I love it.
Agreed.
All right. Aaron, what's number 2?
My number 2, while it is a kicker card, I don't think I've ever seen anybody actually pay the kicker cost because it's so expensive. And honestly, just the version without kicker just does what you want it to do. It typically sees play as a sideboard card. I've seen it in Legacy, a little bit in Vintage, not too much anymore, but it has happened. Incredible artwork, really unique effect. And I do love cards that stretch all the way back to older formats. My number 2 is Sadistic Sacrament.
Yep.
So Sadistic Sacrament is 3 black, 3 pips, originally printed in Zendikar. It is a sorcery. Search target player's library for up to 3 cards, exile them, and then that player shuffles their library. If Sadistic Sacrament was kicked for 7 additional colorless mana, instead search that player's library for up to 15 cards.
Sure.
Exile them, and then that player shuffles their library. So, you can Dark Ritual into this and get 3 cards that you need. There is some discussion whether or not you want Surgical Extraction or this, because sometimes Surgical or just Extirpate will get you what you need. But that requires things to be in the graveyard. And so if you know exactly what you need, and you can go, land Dark Ritual, bam, and then you just take what you need. There are some decks that either fold to this outright or have a very difficult time coming back from this. And so you also have incredible art by Dan Scott where, somebody's in for a heck of a headache. And so, really great art, really unique ability, and just a wild card.
Yeah, this is one of those weird cards that I feel like nowadays you would be able to search their graveyard as well to exile cards for that'd be kind of a thing or whatever. Also, one of those cards that's really hard to reprint because it's got kicker of 7. It's triple black. Like it's a really
weird.
odd.
It's a very weird card to try to reprint for sure.
Yeah. Right, so it's a couple bucks now and probably get more expensive because it's going to be a minute for Wizards wants to reprint it.
One of my favorite Sadistic Sacrament stories recently was when that Oval Chase Dragster deck was the new hotness in Vintage. Somebody played a turn 1 Sadistic Sacrament, looked through the deck, and then conceded. Because they couldn't, because they were like, I could remove 3 of these, but I'll just lose.
Right, just gonna lose. Fantastic.
It's hilarious.
All right, let's move on here to our number 1. Ruben, what's your number 1?
My number 1 surprised me that it ended up being my number 1. But I'm not that surprised. But I was a little surprised. It's the only card with kicker that has both won a Pro Tour and is in the MTGO cube.
Yep.
It did win a Pro Tour in a sideboard of Worlds 2009, Andre Quambra's Naya Lightsaber deck, but I think that still counts. It also has a spiritual successor after a reprint or a rejiggered version in Dominaria in the form of Shivan Fire, but Burst Lightning is my number 1 kicker card.
Well, it could be Burst Lightning.
My number 3.
There you go. Burst Lightning is 1 red mana for an instant with kicker of 4 colorless. Burst Lightning deals 2 damage to any target. If the spell was kicked, it deals 4 damage instead. Originally from the original Zendikar, reprinted in Modern Masters. I mean, it doesn't look like it should be spectacular. It doesn't look like it should be the number 1 kicker card, and yet here we are.
Yeah, it was functionally reprinted as Shivan Fire in Dominaria. And
you can target a player.
Oh, you can you? Oh, right. It's only creatures, right? Oh, you're right. Yeah. I'm sorry. So they did kind of power it down in that way, right? And ultimately, this is a great card early and late, right? We just talked about him earlier. That's a fantastic Magic card. Burst Lightning has seen play in a ton of decks. It was in my top 5 for a reason. In the Naya Lightsaber, which famously only had 4 untapped green sources. With a Lotus Cobra deck. But yeah, the card is super, super sweet. And I've always enjoyed playing this card. And it's like the rate I just don't feel is going to be beat when Shivan Fire sort of comes up and they, purposefully, depower this thing and say, okay, it's great for removal and limited. Let's keep it there and not let this be amazing and constructed.
And the other thing about this card is that it historically had a moment in coverage history when it was a choice between this or a foil Tarmogoyf at the Grand Prix Las Vegas.
Oh yeah, Goyf Gates.
This was the Goyf Gate pick because the deck could definitely have used a Burst Lightning, but man, that foil Tarmogoyf. Man. All right. So, Aaron, what's number 1?
So I said earlier, one of the things that I really like is a card that has an impact on multiple formats. And so this card tends to see play in only one archetype, but that archetype has been viable in both Modern and Legacy. And sometimes, other decks play it too. Decks that really want to kill you with one really big creature. This is a great way to protect that creature. Or if that creature doesn't need protection, you can just use it as a pump spell to help close out the game. My number 1 is Vines of Vastwood. Vines of Vastwood is 1 green. It's an instant with kicker 1 green. Target creature can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control this turn. If Vines of Vastwood was kicked, that creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. So it can either be just a defensive tactic of this thing as hexproof and that's fine, or you can also make it really, really big, and then that Glistener Elf or that, that Inkmoth Nexus, all these things get really, really big and you can just close out a game with it. It's just so cheap too. It's not hard to cast this. It's a bit of a combat trick, and it's just always pesky to see. You're just like, damn it.
It features a mistake. Wizards is really careful about this now, but back in the day, this can target your opponent's creatures, which is awesome, and you will blow them out with this thing. Yep. And you'll be like, wait, what? What does that do again? And
in response to your Hyena Umbra, I'll make your thing, I'll make your core Spirit Dancer untargetable.
Oh, man.
Yeah, thanks. And they're like, are you serious? You're like, yeah. See, back these days, Wizards is careful about saying target creature you control gets hexproof or whatever, but yeah.
We get Dive Down, we get Shell Shield, we get different stuff like that, but we'll never see the likes of Vines of Vastwood again.
Yeah, this was my number 2 for a reason. This card is just a multi-format all-star. I love that we have this card in the sort of the form that it is. Yep. It's wonderfully costed, and it came back in Modern Masters 2015 for a good reason, and it's great. So, all right. So for my number 1 and Ruben's number 4 by process of elimination is a damn fine Magic card that we have spoken about before in different ways, and is not a cheap card. It's almost $20 these days.
Oh, yeah.
The Judge foil almost 60. Which is kind of ridiculous. This card ran a format once known as Extended. And everybody hates Extended. I made a Magic show literally titled Everybody Hates Extended because everyone hated it. But when it was pretty neat and pretty cool, this thing could be combined to be absolutely amazing. White sucks now. I know, and we all know that, at least as of this recording.
It's not that bad.
It's terrible. And that's okay, because once upon a time, there was a white card that ruled the extended format on the back of an Isochron Scepter, and that card was Orum's Chant, showing up from Plane Shift.
Yeah.
It is 1 white mana for a rare instant with a kicker of 1 white mana. Target player can't play spells this turn. And if you paid the kicker cost, creatures can't attack either. That's right. No. Just stop it. Begin your upkeep. No.
And the interesting thing about that is that you can pay the kicker when you
scepter.
scepter it.
Yes.
So you pay the 2 for the scepter, and then you kick it again underneath the scepter, which was very unique. The card continued to see play in combo decks, just as a way to make your opponent not be able to interact with you. Things like Ideal, things like Ad Nauseam Tendrils,
Underworld
Epic
Breach
Storm.
most recently.
Underworld Breach,
Yep,
yeah.
absolutely. And so
That was just in March. Wow.
it's a great, it's an indelible card, and Scepter Chant is one of those 2-card combos that you point to and say, that had a moment in the sun.
Oh, God.
Scepter Chant is one of those combos that like can just come from left field and win a legacy event because no one's prepared for it and nobody thought about it. And they're like, wait, you did and I don't have an...
did a what now?
I don't have a shatter. Yeah. Oh God. And then you're just locked out of the entire game, and that's it. And that's fantastic. So that card is awesome. And so that was our top 10 kicker cards. You'll see them on the screen right now if you review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about. We'll select our favorite and win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me. I still want to make that song work, like boom, ba-na-na-na-na, boom.
Off. Thank you, Ruben.
I'm going to kick out of here.
We are kicking it. Yeah, absolutely. Moving to our final slide, I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-host, Aaron Campbell, Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, our Magic Mike subreddit, like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes and Spotify, or join us here next week. Same time, same place for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.